there out in the darkness, and Hector is running, falls on his face, he falls on his face.
I told the fool he should have waited on his cue.
Hi, I'm Jamie Davis. Thanks for joining me. You know, in the world of theater, we often think of the stars as just the actors on the stage. But the reality is, there are lots of stars, just like in the night sky. Sometimes you don't see them all. Doesn't mean they're not there. Sometimes they're over the stage, sometimes they're in the wings beside the stage. Hope they're not under the stage, but you never know. Some of them have worked on the show for weeks or months before, and they're not even there when the show is produced. But that doesn't mean they're not stars. In this series, we're going to meet some of those stars. So join me here in my state-of-the-art production studio in my backyard as we meet the hidden stars of theater. All right, well, welcome inside the state-of-the-art recording studio that is actually a 1975 travel trailer I've been renovating for the last 6 years, or supposed to have been renovating. Anyway, it's not going to fall down. It is great. I swear that's sound baffling. That is not insulation that should have been covered up. It's all perfectly safe, and we're going to use this sucker to meet some great people. Now, before we get to Jerry Jay Cranford tonight, who is our first guest, I want to give a shout out to Ada High School. Ada High School, thank you for allowing me to use some technology that I needed to be able to make this thing even happen. You guys are my heroes, and because of that, you're going to be the first feature school of this webinar series. And what that means is they get to see themselves on the screen and some of their production shots. We're going to share that with all of you. Listen, if you want to be the featured school and you want to see some of your production shots put up here so everybody can see them and be proud of you and get a big applause, tell your teacher to send them to me. I asked for them, just waiting to get them. So as soon as we do get those, we'll put them up here. But for now, enjoy these production shots from some Ada High School shows and a word from Mary Palmer, their director.
Hi Ada High School, Miss Palmer here. Just wanted you to know that we love you and we miss you. We're going to continue to strive to provide you with enriching activities online for you to use as a creative outlet during this time of social distancing. So stay plugged in, take care of yourselves, and stay safe.
Today we are joined by Jerry Jay Cranford. Jerry Jay Cranford is actually somebody that I've known for quite some time. We're not going to reveal, Jerry Jay, how long that has been. We'll just say 2 or 3 years. So,
that's good.
But I'm going to allow him to share with you a little bit about who he is, what he does. But just know that he is a teacher at Kansas State University in their theater department. He is a professional choreographer. He is an actor. He is also a director professionally in regional theaters. All over the country, and yeah, so that's just a real quick get you excited because he's the real deal, man. He is great, and we look forward to getting to know him better. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, here he is, Jerry Jay Cranford.
Hello.
Hey, Jerry, how are you today, sir?
Good, doing all right.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for blessing us with your presence, man. We are just looking forward. I know. Welcome, Jerry Jay Cranford, to the show. It's great to have you. So I think, you know, just for our audience, for our students here, I'm just going to walk you through some questions just so we can get to know you. And our goal, of course, is to get to know you a little better, but also to just find out what it is you do, because we all love this thing. Right? This is a part of who we are. And some of these younger ones, it's probably a little too old for me. Some students that are with us and going to be watching, you know, they really, they've expressed to me, those I've talked to, that they want to know more about what does it take to get to know this. And so we want to pick your brain. We want to find out what does it take to do what Jerry Jay Cranford has done successfully.
Goodness.
Right?
Right. Moderately successfully. Well, I'm from Tecumseh, Oklahoma, which makes Ada look a little bit like a metropolis, and had a really solid high school music teacher who, I think in 7th grade, we hired in a choreographer, and I said, I think it could be better if, and she allowed me, because I've always been a little sassy, allowed me to take over choreographing Music Man. And I found that I had a talent and a passion and a love for theater. Then I went to East Central University for my first 2 years. And when the realization hit that they did a musical every 2 years, that was not going to feed my soul. I went double major in vocal and instrumental education. In fact, Doug Larimore was my trombone instructor. And so I was there for 2 years, did Harold Hill and the Music Man my sophomore year. Then I transferred to University of Oklahoma, and this was before they had a musical theater degree. Took a lot of dance, took all 4 semesters of their sort of theater progression as a non-major. I think I was the only non-major that stuck it through all 4 semesters, and ended up graduating with a BFA in general music vocal emphasis, and dropped the instrumental because it was just too much. While I was there, I started auditioning for things. Well, I would say at East Central, I studied with Joanne Butler and Jeff Frederick. And then at OU, I studied with Dr. Bruce Govich and Dr. Russell Mathis as voice teachers. And Dr. Govich pushed me to lose weight because I was about 300 pounds. And some of it was I started taking dance classes and just was getting more active than I had been in the past. Lost a lot of weight. He sent me to the auditions for Lyric Theater of Oklahoma in 1984. He said, go in the morning for the dance call. They'll cut you and then come back and they'll hear you sing. Well, they never cut me, and I ended up being hired as a dancer that summer, and then 2 summers. And it was there that I met Heidi Stallings, who was a Grisabella from Broadway that they brought in to do Eva Perón in Evita. And we somehow hit it off, and she said, you know, you're really good, and you might have a career at this. At that point in time, OU had not prepared me for what that might look like. So right out of college, because there had been discussion about SETCs, which is a general audition, and I think at that time there were 35 or 40 theater companies in Atlanta, Georgia that showed up for this audition. From that, I got the first non-union production of a chorus line outside of Chicago. And that really started the connections. And I will talk about that later, sort of the thing about making the connections and knowing that now I go back to that theater and direct and choreograph some. A great theater, great space in Circa 21. It's a 1921 vaudeville touring huge house that's been a dinner theater now for, well, since sometime before 1985 was when I first went there. But because of those connections, the first national of Singing in the Rain folded because it was too expensive to tour. Troika, which is still thriving and alive, took over that tour schedule. They couldn't find anyone to play the lead in the tour, the Gene Kelly role. And they called around to some of the non-act theaters, called this producer. He said, I have a guy here who's great, tap dances, does a lot of stuff, but he's really young. I think I was 24, 25 at the time. They flew into Chicago and had me come in, and I tap danced, sang, and read for them for 4 hours, which is twice as long as the actual show. But got the job and then went on the road for 2 years with Singing in the Rain. They also produced the Lincoln Center's tour of Anything Goes, and I was Billy Crocker in that for about a year and a half. And then I left to go get my equity card in Chicago at a theater doing, what was it? Not a chorus line. What was the first one? Sweet Charity. But when I left, Chris Sieber, who you might know as Lord Farquaad on the Shrek recording, Shrek movie, he replaced me.
Wow.
So some of those connections kept me working. Working in Chicago, I did what I ended up doing for this same theater, Sweet Charity, Me and My Girl, La Cage aux Folles, Little Me, where I got to work with Alex Sanchez, who choreographs a lot now, was dancing with me in a lot of those shows. Phew, who else? Kevin Burrows has done a lot of Broadway shows. Blake Hammond, who was the last Edna Turnblad on Broadway and Hairspray, we worked with me there. So it was a really great place to get my equity card and sort of a really solid training. But because I was also working with people who had done the first national of Evita, who were supposed to go do the European tour, they ended up backing out, and they said, but we're working with a guy who did all the original stuff at Lyric Theater of Oklahoma. They all knew Jane, the woman that had choreographed it. And so sight unseen, because of the recommendation of this particular choreographer I was working with in Chicago, they called and offered me one of the featured dancers, the Sloucho Tango dancer for the European company of Evita. Wow. And Larry Fuller, who was the original choreographer, choreographed that. So I went to Europe for a year and just traveled around on a double-decker bus, and we performed in Rome. Where else? We were in Frankfurt at the opera house there, like 4 times we went back. We played the Olympic ice rink in Innsbruck for 30,000 people. Wow. So it was insane. It was insane. That's probably the craziest moment, like to walk out on stage and hear that 30,000 people applaud numbers was crazy. Yeah. Flo Lacey, who was, I think, the original LA, and I think she may have closed the Broadway company of Evita as well. So it was just, the whole progression of things for me has been crazy. And I think a lot of it is, I'm crazy, that not getting discouraged and knowing, I always say that I talk about the things that were great, but I don't talk about that 2 months, 3 months, 6 months where I was, thank goodness for the extra skills, was choreographing for high schools or singing in concerts or serving as sort of educational outreach for various theater companies. That a lot of that sustained me in between. So I was able to work within the field I love, but not necessarily being on the stage. But gosh, then what else from that? From that, I came back and auditioned at Casa Manana, where I got to work with Leroy Reams and Anna Maria Alberghetti. Then some of the shows from the Casa Manana in Dallas, them transferred to North Shore and outside of Boston. And while I was there, I got called in, because when you don't know who's watching you. Hughes Moss Casting, someone in their office had seen the national tour of Singing in the Rain, hunted me down, called my mother's house in Tecumseh, Oklahoma. She was like, hey, some people from New York just called. They brought me in to replace Harry Groner in Crazy for You. And I was literally like at North Shore, not really knowing what was going to be next. And well, obviously that wasn't next, but I went in and auditioned, was great. A couple of weeks later, they called me back for the standby. Paul Gimignani played the piano for me. It was on the Schubert Theater stage. Mary Wicks was there because she was about to go into the show as the mother. Susan Stroman was there, Mike Okrent. I went down to the front stage, met them, sang really well, and they kept taking different keys, and Paul Gimignani was like, your voice is amazing. I was like, thank you, you're Paul Gimignani.
You really need to work on your list of names to drop.
I know.
That's kind of sad.
The kids at school make fun of me. They just go now, boom. And I was like, oh, I can't help it. It's amazing to me sometimes when I hear it. I'm like, it just seems like a whole other person that, singing along with recordings in Tecumseh, Oklahoma didn't seem real or possible. What it led from that? I don't even know what I was talking about. But anyway, that got to do all these crazy cool things, auditioned for that, called me back for the standby, could not have been less funny if I'd have tried, and didn't get it. And of course, celebrated by going to, I think, TGI Fridays that was there at the time in the Times Square and getting it was Black Bart or one of their big Sundays that has like cookies and all kinds of stuff. That was my go-to. So I was gonna celebrate the failure I had just had. But that led me to sort of a year of work in Kansas City doing the Cop at Yeston Phantom, because it was one of the shows I'd done. A company was looking for someone, and I ended up doing that and then getting cast in a bunch of things. Went to LA, did the Lawrence Welk show. And
we'll explain to the kids later what that is.
Yeah, it's on PBS now. It was a TV show that was on for 27 years. But Lawrence Welk's son opened a theater in Branson and auditioned and took a bunch of people from Los Angeles to be sort of the new stars and surround the old stars of Lawrence Welk. Then I'll talk about it later, but got into Les Miserables, which I did for 7.5 years. From that, went to work at Disneyland in California. So at like 37, 6, I was finally doing a theme park. I had never done that, but was the genie in their musical production of Aladdin, which was really cool. Probably one of my favorite jobs ever. Then just because of circumstances and taking care of family, we moved back to the Midwest, to Kansas City, where I've been fortunate to work a lot, direct a lot. A couple of years ago, I got to direct and choreograph Hairspray. It was an all-union production, union orchestra of about 25. The theater is an outdoor space that seats 8,000. And Brad Oscar, who you might know from Something Rotten, the producers, two-time Tony nominee, he's in Mrs. Doubtfire right now, was my Edna. And I was friends with him, having done the producers with he and Roger Bart at one time.
Wow.
And so when they asked about Hairspray, I said, well, if I'm doing Hairspray and directing, I want Brad Oscar, because he's great. And on top of that, just a nice guy. But yeah, and through the course of that was also, again, the in-between times, that's the glamorous story. In between was guest directing and doing workshops at universities, Kansas State being one of those, Johnson County Community College, a production I did for them. So one of the people that came in for KCACTF said, hey, have you thought about going to grad school? And I was like, no, but really made it worth my while to attend grad school. He said, you're really good at this and you should be teaching. And so then here I am. I'm now tenured faculty in theater and not really focused on musical theater, but I do handle some of that for our school. But that's sort of the long story.
Oh no, that was great, man! What a journey! What a fun journey! And I'm sure it had its ups and downs, but man, that's just incredible. It's just incredible for sure.
Well, and I say that what I hope I bring to the classroom is understanding that I was from a small town who had no idea what a career in this field would look like. I just knew that I enjoyed it and loved it, and people were like, "Hey, you're funny," and they're like, "You're kind of good at this." And then, sort of, I had to figure it on my own. Now I teach a careers in theater business course where we talk about a lot of sort of finding auditions and getting a website together and just trying to understand how you can get started. Absolutely.
Very good. Well, thanks for that. That was great, man. That was fun to walk through that with you. I'm gonna go back and pick some things out of there that you talked about, just to help us get a better understanding, perhaps of some things. And one of those is, you talked about when you were at OU and when you were at ECU. You talked about that you got a BFA, Bachelor of Fine Arts, and talk to us a little bit about what that is compared to a Bachelor of the Arts, or when you put the F in it, right? And usually in school, a F is a bad thing. But in this case, maybe it is. Thank you. But talk to us a little bit about the difference of those. You can switch into your professor mode here.
The other hat. That's
exactly.
I was like, today I've got my professor costume on.
There you go.
That BFA means you're going to focus exclusively on one aspect. So if you're getting a BFA in acting, it is going to be just acting. If you're doing a BFA in musical theater, it will be just acting, voice, and dance. You're not going to explore any other aspects of theater. It is really meant to focus you on those things. So if you're, knowing that, I think it was 2 years ago, that there were 99 union contracts in Broadway musicals. So there were 99 jobs in New York, basically on Broadway, that you would be vying for with sort of that BFA musical theater focus. I would say when I went to school, I didn't know what that meant, really. I've learned more of it just in the last few years because I teach in a BA or BS program, which means you can choose a primary focus. So with ours, you can do sort of a musical theater emphasis, an acting emphasis, tech design. emphasis. But no matter what you do, you're going to take foundational courses so that everyone learns how to design. Everyone's going to do some sort of scenic design, sound design, lighting design, that you're going to be exposed to all of those, which is basically what I ended up doing when I went back for my master's in directing. Learned a lot of those things that I had not learned as an undergraduate, to make me more proficient as a director and able to communicate better with designers, because I didn't have that verbiage. But I don't know. I mean, I think if you're looking at schools, it's important to find out and figure out what exactly you want. I would say that for me, and learning more about it, it's the BA, BS route is nice because you have a lot more tools in your toolkit to get you working. I have an equity actor who's done a lot of leads with the Kansas City Repertory Theater, and he would come speak to students about when he first moved to Kansas City and no one was casting him. He finally took a job because he'd done it before and had experience in school as a props designer for one of the equity theaters. And then they got to know him, and then they called him back the next year. Then he started getting roles that led him to bigger roles and sort of leads. It's like
kind of the Harrison Ford story, right? He was a carpenter on set because he couldn't get a job as an actor, and then one day they needed him, and they saw him walking and said, "Hey, what about that guy?" And boom.
Yeah, I was like, having more skills is never a bad thing, and acting is not exactly like every other profession, but there is some of the paying your dues and sort of working your way towards something.
So then, would you say that there are there students that a BFA though makes more sense? Maybe students who have been more focused and been in dance forever, and they do know I like it all, but really this is the one thing I want to do professionally. Would you say that's accurate, or what does that look like?
Yes, a BFA, because of I fault to the OU because I've come back a couple of times and done roles for Lyric Theater in the last 3-4 years. If you saw Wizard of Oz, I was the Cowardly Lion. That was also fun. But when those students are machines, they're crazy good dancers, crazy good singers, crazy good actors. Most of them have already been training at dance since they were like 4. That a lot of those skill sets the expectations are higher. That's not to say that there's not work for other talents and training and skills, because I would say that I may not be your best personally, I may not be your best dancer, singer, or actor, but I'm going to be one of the best guys that does all 3. And you can put me in a lead and not be embarrassed. And that, I will say, that's what got me my equity card, was being proficient at all 3, but I was not the best, but I was a really strong actor and strong singer and a good dancer. I just thought of something else. But I ended up in Sweet Charity getting my equity card, understudying both of the male principals, because they could put me in the ensemble as a dancer mover and then also have me understudy roles. And if someone went down, that I would be solid and strong as an actor in this theater. But yeah, I mean, that's been, it's served me well without, while I say I have a BFA in general music, I really have a BA because I took so much other stuff that was not just focused. I sort of created my own interest at University of Oklahoma.
Cool. Very good. So let me just slip your professor hat or keep it on here, because we've talked a little bit about that. Talk to me, because we do have a lot of students who are thinking about college. Where should I go? What program should I pursue? Do you have any advice for, say, a sophomore, junior, senior? When should they start looking at that? What should they be looking for specifically in a program? What's your advice there?
A few years back, I read an article that said, just looking at all professions, that the students who were most successful had a strong mentor, ally, support, at least one strong, from their university time. And, that's the person you can have those go to the office and sit and talk about anything. But there's a connection. And I say, by your junior year, you should start narrowing down and visiting schools. Ask to sit in on classes. They will let you. meet with students, find out the environment and climate. Because if you're going to spend the money and sit down for 4 years, maybe 5, like me, at a school, you should feel comfortable. I would say that if you sit in on an acting class and any yelling happens, then that's probably a good sign to walk away. I would say that in a university setting, my job is to give you tools, skills, and understanding, not to judge your talent, because my job is to help that grow. That I myself, University of Oklahoma, I would consider myself like the B team. I did some roles. I was not probably the person they thought would be as successful as I have been. But a lot of the information that I was taking from them, sort of, I needed that year or two for it to sort of coalesce and synthesize for me. And then once that happened, I was like, oh, that's what they meant. And suddenly it was like,
yeah. Well, and nobody ever knows, right?
yeah.
You have no idea. You have no idea, which is.
But I will say I've worked with students who were from programs where they were, judged and critiqued and told you'll never make it. Or a friend of mine from one school said that she had a scholarship revoked because they didn't think she was going to be that good.
Wow.
And I don't understand that.
You just never know.
I was like, then they're fake.
So enough of this school stuff, man.
Okay. What now?
We don't want to talk about school that much. So here's what everybody really wants to know, right? So what do I got to do to get into Les Mis, man? John, my last big bucket list role. You got to hook a brother up here, Jerry Jay. Come on, seriously.
Sing loud.
Sing loud. Well, I think that those people that know me will say, nailed it. Remember, I grew up in the days of Dorothy Summers, who did not allow us to use microphones. We're protected, right? A lost art.
Well,
let's transition now to what you're doing really outside of the classroom, which is primarily directing and acting on the regional theater level, I believe. So, and maybe that's a great place to start, because I know when I was a student, to me, if you were going to do it professionally, you went to LA or New York, right? That was, and I didn't know about the whole regional theater. So maybe talk to us a little bit about the regional theater scene, what that is, where are the big spots, what's the career opportunity there?
Well, I tell my students, I was like, if you're looking to, pack your bags and move to New York, it's such a different climate than it was even when I was starting out. It's rough. And like I said, there were 99 jobs. A lot of times you'll go to New York and audition to get jobs and move elsewhere, or go to regional theater. Every major city, some not so major cities, have some form of professional theater. I say Kansas City was great to move from LA to Kansas City because they have 14 theaters that offer some version of an equity contract, be it special guest artists, production or dinner theater contracts, the summer stock contracts. So you can make a decent living and have a decent life there. Chicago's the same. I don't even know how many theaters there are there that are union professional theaters and non-equity theaters that also allow you to continue working. Non-equity is not having a union card. Equity is having your union card, and there are various rules, and they've just shifted in the last couple of years. But the Broadway tours, most of them are equity union tours. The Wickeds, the Book of Mormons, the Hamiltons. Some of the lessers are non-equity, which is where I started out and made a nice living back in the late 80s. But know that you can go anywhere and do really amazing theater without having to be a starving artist in New York. And that's what I've tried to open up to my students. Because of our proximity to Kansas City, a lot of them will go to Kansas City, work until they get an equity card, and then move to Chicago or New York. So they already have sort of that card in hand that gets them into the bigger auditions. To audition for a Broadway show, you have to be a union member, because the expectation is you will be more professional. That's not to say that they don't sometimes have calls to see other people, but most of the auditions for Broadway shows, you have to have an equity card.
Got you. Absolutely. So would you say it's pretty good advice to, kind of think in a progression of going regional first and then to New York, if it works to that, if you even decided?
Yes, I would. I would say that the 3-4 years that 5 that I was working regionally non-union created a lot of connections and people who then we all sort of move up together. That you have the circuit 21s that will have you come guest direct and choreograph, or you have that person you were with that's now an artistic director somewhere else, or that you worked alongside someone that's ended up directing a production in Vancouver that got a bunch of nominations for Marvelous Wonderettes because the woman producing it I'd worked with sort of earlier. So I think it's important to do that level of work to sort of work and grow and be ready to work in the union, be ready to hit the Broadway auditions with a little more training. And you don't get, in school, you're never going to get the feeling of what it means to do 8 shows a week for 2 months, 3 months, 7.5 years. It's a different mindset just physically and how you have to take care of yourself. And that, especially when you're working in non-union theaters, sometimes there aren't understudies and you're expected to perform because they can't shut down. They can't afford to.
Yeah, and there's aspects of it that are probably become just a job and not as much an enjoyment.
Yeah, and that's, I say that, you go into this and you understand that not all of the things you do will be high artistic level. Some of them will be because you would like to eat and pay your rent. But
and those are good things.
And those are good things.
Unless you're in rent, in which case you don't pay your rent.
Right.
Sorry.
But if you are, you can always find something to enjoy in those moments. And that you're still getting to do something you love, even if it's not the most fulfilling. You're still getting to. I always said, well, I'm going to talk about one of the things that one of the things I always said in school was that if I can pay my bills doing what I love, then I will consider that a success. Being on Broadway was sort of a luck. That was a whim. That was not really in my life plan of something. I always thought, oh, that would be fun, but it wasn't I wasn't seeking it.
Right. That wasn't your goal. It just happened.
Do good work.
A lot of people hate you for that. Right?
Well,
braggart. No, I'm just kidding. That's wonderful.
Talk about the radio audition, which was in itself weird. So we were in Branson doing the Lawrence Welk show. They announced that Les Mis was going to audition in Branson. And this was like 94, 3, 4. Back when Branson was sort of in its heyday, and there were like 50 theaters, and there were a lot of us from LA. There were some from New York, sort of all over. And we thought, oh, this is a joke. They're just going to come here. They're going to scope out. I had decided that Johnson Lift Casting was going to scope out and see how many local people they could put in a year-round production of Joseph or Cats.
Right.
Branson would love that. But I was wrong, thankfully. So we go there that day thinking, little Les Mis call Branson. We know everybody. It'll be fine. 900 people showed up.
Wow.
Because New York people, I guess, this is what I found out later, knew that Johnson Lift would fly out and you would have a better chance of being seen than at the New York auditions. So they would fly into these regional calls that Les Mis, I guess, was notorious for having. I would say Johnson Lift had already 3 times flown me to New York for Cats, which I had never gotten. So I went in and there were 5 people at the table. There were 900 people. They typed people out, people crying, crazy. Those of us who got to come back and sing, I was asked then to come back the next day and sing for Enjolras. And there were 5 guys called back to sing for that. I pulled together a song that night. This is where having a solid book of music that you love is a really great thing, because strategy worked for me. Went in with, I was going to sing Bouidoy that I'd learned the night before. Miss Saigon, same composers, high and loud. I was like, this is right in the pocket. But got there, someone else sang it. 2 two guys sang the end of Anthem from Chess, and I don't remember what the other guy sang, but I sat there going, I'm not going to sing the song I just learned, and that was they were great. I ended up singing Words He Doesn't Say from Romance Romance, which was originally sung by Scott Bakula, who's now on a Star Trek or something.
Yeah.
NCIS New Orleans. So went in with a song that was much more actor focused, still had some high notes at the end, and after I sang, they were crying and they talked to me for 45 minutes and I knew I had the job. So it was strategic in that moment to not be the fifth guy. I was the last guy, which also helped me. To not be the last guy that came in and screamed a song at them.
Yeah, that's great. Good thinking. There's so strategy works, right?
Keep all the songs you love, because you never know when they will come in handy.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Well, awesome. Well, I know one of the things I would love, let's transition maybe into now, currently, you know, you are doing some regional directing in regional theater and choreography as well. And even I know like this summer, I believe you have some where you are doing those together, right? Maybe because some of the regional theaters, budgetarily, it makes sense to do both. And so talk to us a little bit about what does that look like as a director choreographer in regional theater?
So I started transitioning basically as a choreographer to a couple of the equity theaters in Kansas City. That grew. I ended up going to Merry Go Round in New York, upstate New York, to choreograph and play Thénardier in their Les Mis and co-direct. And then they had me back to direct, and it just sort of like acting, the non-equity, whatever. I started growing from that because I've always, since 7th grade, when I said I didn't like the choreography, I've always had an eye for that and always wanted to. The transition happened pretty easily for me, just in the help and support that I got basically in Kansas City, working a lot for their theaters. And because they are big and good and solid theaters, it's allowed me much work. Being a director choreographer is obviously cost effective for a producer because they're not paying 2 people and they're not flying 2 people. They're not getting hotel rooms for 2 people. So that has helped me, and I feel like I do it well. They seem to like me.
You mean they don't pay you twice as much for doing both jobs?
No. but that's it. You know, everyone's really been awesome, and I love doing it. And I will say that being on stage now for me is easy because I've got that part of my brain and body and everything figured out. It's a whole other side of sort of the planning part of my brain to use for directing and choreographing and sort of putting all the puzzle pieces together. That's what this summer, I hope, I'm scheduled to direct and choreograph a production of Billy Elliot, and then I am choreographing and performing in a production of Freaky Friday. So we'll see.
That sounds like fun, and we'll be hoping with you that those happen, right? Absolutely. Maybe we'll make, and those are in Kansas City, both of those?
Both in Kansas City.
Maybe we'll have to make a road trip.
Lyric Theater of Oklahoma reached out to me to see if I was available for something this coming summer, back in November, I think. But I was like, I just can't. I already crazy booked.
Well, you'll have to make it back here as soon as you can so that we can. But maybe we'll road trip to Kansas City. So I do have a question, and I think I actually saw somebody chat this in too. As a director on a regional theater level, talk to me about kind of expound about working with others, because as we do more of these interviews in the coming weeks, I have interviews with lighting designers and with props masters and designers and with sound and audio designers. Well, as a director, how do they fit into your directorial approach and philosophy, so to speak, and working with them?
You know, what we do is very collaborative. And so I would say that once we've had sort of the design meetings and designs are finalized and all of that sort of roundtable work is done, then I sort of release and let you be the director of sound, the director of lights, the director of scenic design, that I don't need to be in total control of those things because I've got enough on my plate with the other. I know some directors like to be very I don't know, hands-on or controlling of a lot of those aspects. I also will say a lot of the people I work with now, I've worked with numerous times. So there's a shorthand and a trust that happens. So it's been, that part is great. Again, I get to oversee this to make it sure it's all cohesive. But I think being friendly and kind and communicative and getting all of the ideas and accepting them and knowing that no matter what, your idea is not always the best one at the table, and being able to let that go. And it's hard sometimes for me because I read a script or start working on something and I get a vision of what it should look like and how things need to move. And sometimes I can ask for that and say, I really need, 4 rolling staircases. Or sometimes I say, well, I was thinking rolling staircase, and then I'll have a designer say, well, what about, and can totally shift that, I don't know, the thing that I was so set on. And I would say that scenic designers are awesome because I can come up with like the worst ideas and they somehow make it look amazing. But yeah, I appreciate and I think support everything the rest of the team is doing, sort of as kings of their own kingdoms.
That's great. My experience as a scenic designer, I would say every director has not been that way. Some of them have, but that's great. That's a great, and I know when I direct, that's the same, right? You want to surround yourself with a team who is creative and who doesn't go completely against your vision, but who also has some visions of their own, because it keeps it from being flat.
Yeah,
which is good. Well, Jerry, Jerry Jay, this has been great. I do want to hear, before we transition into a time of Q&A, I just kind of want to give you an opportunity as, what would you say to some of our students that are here thinking, some of them are thinking, I want to do this professionally. I want to do this thing. So just maybe some last little tidbits of wisdom to leave us with. What would you say? Here's some wisdom. If this is what you really want to do, then do it, right? But what would you leave them with?
The main thing I tell my kids is be kind and do good work. If your work is impeccable, they will want to work with you again. They will find ways to work with you again. If you are kind and your work is good, even more of a reason to keep working with you. And that said, being kind and doing good work means showing up, being prepared, being on time. That it's just all of the things that make you professional. I would say Lyric Theater was a great training ground for me, because when I first worked there in '84, they did 5 shows a summer. You rehearsed for 2 weeks and performed at night. So once the show opened, you were performing for 2 weeks at night, rehearsing all day. So it was like a steam tank all summer, and it was pretty much end of school to beginning of school. And if you were late, if you weren't prepared, things were taken away from you. You were written up. They would dock you like $10 of your $150 paycheck and things that you just knew. You like, on that schedule, it's like, you can go out and party, but you better be there at 9 a.m. in the morning ready to dance, or you will not function in their world. And it was a really good, strict way to learn about sort of responsibility.
Yeah, that's great. Well, good. So I like that. Be good and do good work. I think that you can apply that to most areas of life if you want to be successful. So good thoughts there for sure. All right, so let's take some questions from the peanut gallery. I think first on the list here, Mary Palmer, you got a question for Gerry Jay you'd like to ask?
Yeah. Hey, once again, thank you so much. This has been incredible for our students. I'm really, really enjoying this. And I'm glad that we're going to be able to record it so the kids that are not able to log in today can hear this later. And I'm sorry, I have my own daughter in the background, so you're probably hearing her. But one of the biggest things as a high school teacher that we try to communicate to our students is, you're not always going to get the lead in the show that you audition for. And we are incredibly blessed at Ada High because we have so many talented students. And we tell them all the time, you know, you're going to be in the ensemble and there is good work and good lessons to be learned in the ensemble. Can you talk to them a little bit about what they can learn and what they can take with them into the professional world if they're not always the lead?
And be kind, do good work, because if you don't do that in the ensemble, you will not be a lead. That a lot, you know, I mean, that was my first 2 summers at Lyric was as dance ensemble. The second year I ended up sort of dance singing ensemble. The third year I had like 3 good roles. And part of that was they want to know you. They want to know you're dependable. And I would say that like high school, college, Kansas City, Broadway, it's sort of the same thing, that there are all these talented people. Some of them are going to get roles. You may get sometime. You may not. You may end up ensemble. You may end up with nothing. You may be asked to run the fly system. That if you truly love this, you have to be willing to participate sort of at all costs. That's not really a good way to say that. But it's a team, and understanding that it's not just the lead that tells a story, that it's your designers that tell a story. It's your props designer, your props people backstage, it's your sound mixer. All of those people tell the story with you. And it's ridiculous to think that the lead is the only thing important. I have never felt that way, which I don't know where that part of me, that DNA came from. I can also, one of my favorite things, and me and my girl in Chicago, I had 2 lines and got a paragraph mentioned in the review, but I was like, I was going to do my thing. I had a backstory. My policeman knew exactly who he was. And opening night came out and said my 2 lines and got applause. And I don't know what that was about, but I think it's understanding that there are opportunities everywhere within what we do, and being embracing that. And again, I love it so much that, I mean, Les Mis, I was in the ensemble. I waved the big red flag in the back for 7.5 years, but I also got to understudy Enjolras. And, you know, with a tour like that, someone's always sick, someone's got a vacation, someone's got a personal day, got to go on frequently. And had I been that role, I don't think I could have sustained it more than maybe 6 months, because it was vocally taxing. It was emotionally a lot. But it was really nice to step into that for a moment and then be able to go back sort of in the ensemble and play with my friends again and not be quite so serious. But I think you have to just be willing to do the good work, no matter where you're placed or how you're cast.
Very good. All right. Next, Madison Edwards has a question for us. Madison? I wonder if Madison had to leave. I know we had some people who had to head out. I think so. Let me go ahead and ask her a question for her for the rest of us, because it's pretty good. So Madison asked, was it a struggle when you started directing to work with all of the different people, with all of the different personalities and characteristics? How do you manage that? Especially for me, I'm wondering, how do you manage that for 7.5 years?
Oh, with Les Mis? I mean, Les Mis, I didn't, you know, I was sort of had my own little, I was track 15. That was my track in the show. So that was, you know, I mean, it was weird because you travel with the same people, you work with the same people. Again, being kind, trying to get along. There were the people I didn't like sometimes. And probably, I'm sure people didn't like me, but I tried to go in and do my job. I found my group and circle of friends that I sort of socialized with, and just tried to stay out of the whatever conflicts were happening or dynamics were going on stage. As a director, it is a lot of different, you know, very creative people working together. And I would say that, you know, you go see a show that you don't like, and going in with that love of theater and knowing that no one sets out to make a really bad night of theater, that elements happen or budgets happen and things happen, and the same thing when you're working with a team of designers, understanding that there are limitations to sometimes the things you can do, what you can have, and dealt with that this week on a production. But being kind. I mean, there's just no other way about it. That letting everyone have a say at the table and appreciating their input, and not, it's sort of the improvisational thing of yes and, as opposed to saying no but, and shutting someone's creativity down. If you can say yes to things and figure out how to incorporate vision. One of my favorites was my designer I work with here a lot. She's phenomenal, and she gets me because we've worked together so much now. She came in with some photos for a production of Rocky Horror, and it was an installation of white marble columns and at a museum, and they had been graffitied on. And she said, I don't know why I thought this image was kind of cool, but I don't think we can have a white set. And I said, why not? And we ended up with this amazing white draped sort of Grecian looking mansion that had been graffitied and written on. And again, that was one of those things that she was hesitant, but it ended up being stunning. And it goes back to the whole knowing that your idea may not be the best one in the room, and appreciating that you're with a really group of talented people that have their own creative spark and energy to help.
That's great. And I tell you, one of the things that I'm taking away from, and I've known, but hearing you say it makes it, so much of this is about, and again, it goes to that being nice. It's about networking. It's about working with good people and knowing, because I would imagine, do you have some input when you go to direct as to who your creative team is?
Sometimes they will say, do you know a designer? Do you have someone? And, you know, you're going to use someone you know and work well with. And that for actors, it's the same thing. That if you go see Broadway shows consistently for a few years, you're going to see a lot of the same people in the ensemble. You're going to see, you know, some of the same principals doing the same types of things over and over, because it's a business. And if you're putting $60 million into a show, then you want people you know. You want ensemble dancers that you know are going to be able to newsies, be able to do, you know, triple backflips 8 times a week. That you want to have a connection or relationship with those people. So some of it is, I saw someone asked about how do you audition for a Broadway show? Some of that is sort of building up the connections and network. If you're going to move to New York, Broadway Dance Center, a lot of the Broadway choreographers teach classes there, or their assistants teach classes there. That's a great place to go take some movement classes and at least get your face known and start meeting people. So we say that's a really good place to start.
Cool. Riley Marshall, what is your question for Gerry Jay?
Hi. So my question is, what are some tips to be memorable in Broadway auditions or just auditions in general?
Hi, Riley. Well, for me in that Les Mis moment, it was, I defaulted to a piece that, you know, probably the musical theater professor in me would not say was the best choice for that piece, but it's one of those songs that it makes my heart happy to sing. And it's finding material that speaks to you, that you love. And sometimes even if it's not the right piece for the show, sometimes it's the right piece to show you. The other thing that I use, I am big on, when you go to those auditions, you've got 16 bars to sell yourself. And that means not just talent. They also want to see a little of your personality. The casting guy from Johnson Liff, we became sort of friendly. At one point I said, what are you looking for? And he said, well, I want to know that you've got talent and you're not going to go postal, which means personality. They want to know that, they want to see how much crazy you're going to bring to the cast. And so I think some of that is they want to see you and how you present yourself. So I guess finding a piece that speaks to you, and then just being. For a while, my initial 16 was Mr. Cellophane. And it was a very shortened version of that, sort of one verse into the chorus. And I would have a little breakdown. I would strip and try to get someone's attention. basically take off a suit coat and dance. And when I went for a year to the MFA in musical theater at San Diego State. And the first day you're supposed to bring your 16 bars. And I did that. And they were like, well, that's not really how it's done in the show. You shouldn't really do that. And I was like, but at the time I was like 42. And I was like, it works for me. Because what I would do is sing a high A and go into the splits at the end of that never even, and go down the splits. So what it did was make them go, oh, that was funny. And then I could come back later and show them what else I could do. So that was sort of my gimmick number. And then Words He Doesn't Say is it makes me cry.
So at 40, you went to a high A and ended in the splits?
Yeah, I can't do that anymore. But yeah.
Wow, if I tried to do the splits, I would hit in a high A for the wrong reasons, but then I'd have to go to the hospital. Impressive, man. That's impressive. So I think we have time for one more question from Anne Ryan Dunlap.
Hi, okay, so I'm starting my first semester of college in the fall, and I plan on pursuing an MFA. I'm not really sure where to start or what I should keep in mind or know before pursuing this as a career. Is there any advice you could give me?
BFA, you're getting a bachelor's, right? Do you have a school selected?
Yes, I'm attending UCO.
Cool. Greg and Marilyn Govich, my voice teacher's wife, teaches voice there. Really strong program. Have you been able to visit? Of course, now is not the best time for that, but have you been able to visit or observe or have any sort of connection with UCO? UCO? Sorry, I'm like totally asking questions of her. The thing you want to know is when you get there, know that you have the power. If your voice teacher doesn't quite click, then there are usually other vocal studios that you can look towards. They have a really strong program, so they're going to give you a lot of information about careers and how to get out there and work. I've actually directed some of their students in pieces, and are all really solid. So it's a good choice. I don't know if I've answered your question or helped you much, but it's a strong program, and have fun. Take advantage of all of the opportunities, because in college is the time when you could just fail and fail big and no one's going to know. Choose the songs that are wrong for you. I know they do a lot of cabaret performances where you can explore sort of how you interact with the crowd, that you can start developing timing. Take advantage of all those opportunities.
So I said that was the last question, but I saw one just come in that is really good. Brady Max 75. So Brady, I'm going to let you sneak it in here, man. But this will be our last question, and but this is a good one. I like it. I want to hear your answer.
Cool. Okay. Hello. So, and I know this has happened with me a lot, but is there any time where you felt stuck, like you felt like you were just in one spot and you couldn't move forward? And if so, how did you find a way kind of out of that hole? Like you found a way to progress and move forward?
Have I?
I told you that's a good question, isn't it?
I know. I was stuck. I've always been willing to try new things, audition for new things, push myself for new things. I would say the closest I've been to that, and I can't really speak to it because is getting trapped in that I'm a loud, funny character man, and have done a lot of that. But I have a theater company in Kansas City that are friends who have allowed me to do John Wilkes Booth and Assassins and do some of more, I don't know, as far as musical theater goes, meatier roles. To do Hello Again for Michael John LaJusa. But I think in those moments, I've always, I guess, answering that, sought out other opportunities that might push me. If it's a new theater company, if it's online submitting for something else that maybe isn't comfortable. But because I love what I do, looking for ways for me to be able to push myself, to not just allow myself to be pigeonholed, or not to get feel that I'm stuck doing one thing over and over again. Or Les Mis, 7.5 years. I think part of that for me, staying that long, was the travel, the paycheck, and the people I got to work with. Because on that tour, I got to perform with Sutton Foster and Lea Salonga and Andrea McArdle and Colm Wilkinson for 6 months. So about the time I would get ready, like, okay, it's been blah, blah years of doing Les Mis, someone was announced that they were coming in. I was like, oh my God, what an opportunity this is to sort of work and study. And then it became not necessarily about what I was doing in the show, because I had that down, was being able to watch someone else that was insanely talented, sort of at the top of their game. I think you can always find something to keep you engaged.
Very good. Well, I'm going to ask you to do one more thing here, just for knowledge base, because I know.
As long as it's not the splits.
Yeah, no, Jeff, that was it. Dang it, you ruined it. No. One of the things you've mentioned several times is the casting agency, and I'm going to get it wrong myself. Johnson
Lift.
Yes. So just for the edification of our students who have no idea probably what that is, just drop some just basic knowledge on them.
Well, Johnson Lift is no more. It's now Tara Rubin is sort of this. So when a big production is, when any production, even some regional theaters use casting agents. They go to a casting agent who then sort of handles the general calls, and their hope or their assumption is these casting agents have a connection with sort of managers and other talent agencies that then can call in specific people that they would be more right for their show, basically to cut through sort of the 900 people that they might see at a call. So the casting agent runs and handles the auditions for them, chooses the people that then the higher ups will then sit in the room and see sort of the callbacks and not the initial auditions. But yeah, and that, again, for New York, sometimes it takes being seen by those casting agents numerous times before they trust you. And that said, the day that I had my Les Mis callback, when they said, oh my God, that was great, where have you been? I said, well, you've actually flown me to New York for Cats 3 times, because that was a separate thing for them. And when I said that, they were like, oh, and made the connection. They sort of knew. But casting agents, you need to get sort of on their good side. Many of the casting agents will teach courses, like an acting coaching, audition coaching courses in New York. If you're going to spend your money on those, take it with one of those casting agents, because you're paying, but you're getting time in front of them to find out what it is they're looking for.
Good advice. Definitely someone you want to be nice to.
Right?
Because I would imagine there are those who get on their bad side and they never work.
Yeah, and they can stop calling you in, and you can audition for them and they'll stop calling you back.
Yeah.
Again.
Well, Gerry Jay, this has been delightful, man. Thank you so much for giving us this hour. And we are the better for it. And so thank you. So here's what I want to do. Everyone that is here still, unmute your microphones and let's give Gerry Jay a round of applause all together. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Brava, brava. Very, very good.
And I was saying, if another question or anything comes up, you can always email me at K-State, JJ Cranford, ksu.edu.
Very good.
Always email me a question and I will answer.
Awesome. Very good. Well, thank you, sir. And thank you to our audience as well.
Thank you.
And to all of you out there in the interwebal lands. Here is my message to all of this. I think what Jerry said, Gerry Jay said, if you love this, do this. No matter what it is. Professionally, for myself, I've never done it professionally, but I've been doing shows since 1976, and I love it, and I will always love it. This is our thing, man. Find a stage and use that stage, no matter what level it is. Well, that's it. that's our episode. So hope you enjoyed it. I know I had a great time hearing from Jerry Jay Cranford and learning from him and all of his experience. I think we're better for it. And this is just the beginning. We've got a lot of episodes coming up with some exciting people. Let's just drop a couple exciting things here. So one of those is going to include a head audio engineer from a little show called, I think it's Hamilton. So I'm not going to throw away that shot. Sorry. Couldn't resist it. National tour of Fiddler, Moulin Rouge on Broadway. We've just got some exciting things coming up that you're not going to want to miss. So come back, hear, learn, just be better for it and be better prepared to do it when you get the opportunity to not throw away your shot. Sorry. But listen, one last thing here before we leave. I want you to know another segment I want to do every week, and that is to honor the seniors from our drama programs, because you deserve it. We want to give you a big round of applause. We know that the end of the year is not happening the way that you would want it or the way that any of us would. And so if you're not featured in this, it's because I don't have your picture, or I know we've got some upcoming ones already gotten in. But this week, Ada, we're going to show your seniors from your program. But seniors, class of 2020, hey, if I don't have your picture, get it to your teacher. Say, what? Send it in. Get it to me. They've got my contact info. I'll leave it in the comment section below as well. But please send it to me so I can show you off. Thank you guys for coming. Love you, appreciate you. Stay safe and stay sane, and we'll see you next time right here